Good morning, gardening friends. It's now Thursday at about 9:30 in the morning, and I figured it was time for an update. Not a whole lot has developed. There's a few little things, so let's take a look. Okay, on the north end of the patio, we've got the squash plants, which are about the same, kind of yellow, kind of brown, and a little bit of green. And just to the right of that, I've got a cucumber plant that is not looking great, but still alive. On the curve, all of the plants that I transplanted have survived, and the ones that were already there, the snapdragons, they're surviving. I'm managing to start harvesting seeds from some of the snapdragons, although I've never really had a whole lot of luck with trying to grow from seed. To the right of the curve, I've got the pepper plants, which are just getting taller and taller, which makes me happy. In front of that, I've got a different cucumber. I believe that's the lemon cucumber, and you can see some brown there. I'll just cut off some of the dead leaves and it just keeps growing, so we'll see what all happens with that. And just in front of that, and right here, is where the strawberry was, and I say was because it looks like it's died, so I'm going to be looking at replacing that strawberry. On the south end, we've got the Swiss chard, which is kind of bouncing back from the problems it had with heat, and actually this week there's been a fair amount of heat, so I don't know what the difference is other than maybe it hasn't climbed up above 105. Just beyond that, I've got the greens planter where the Simpson lettuce is pretty brown but still alive, and I've got the basil plant in front of those. The basil plants are doing nicely, and this is one that I've historically had a problem trying to grow from seed, so I'm happy that it succeeded this time. Just beyond the basil, I've got the hard rock tomato, which is getting bigger, and let me see if I can get you a little closer view on all my tomatoes. So here's the hard rock. The plant is getting bigger. I don't see any buds yet, but remember, I grew this from seed. It's been probably a couple of months now. The other tomatoes I have in the garden I bought as plants at the local home center, so those had a good head start, but it's promising. It looks good. That sets us up with the two bigger tomato plants, the patio on the right and the yellow pear on the left. And actually I'm just noticing now what looks like a seedling for a yellow pear, or a seedling for another tomato plant, I should say, in the yellow pear box. So we'll see what that develops into. But if you look real close, or maybe I can get you a close-up, if you look at the top center of the screen, you can see a yellow pear tomato. One tiny little tomato. These things are basically like cherry tomatoes, but in a pear shape, and in this case, yellow. So I wanted to show you that before I picked it and enjoyed it. Speaking of which, the two patio tomatoes that were developing on the last update, I enjoyed both of those. No developments in the greenhouse planters there, as there was just something wrong with the way I did it or something. I'm still giving them water here and there, although I'm not filling the bottom like I was before. I just haven't gotten around to dumping out the soil and figuring out what to do next. So as long as I haven't gotten around to it, I'll just keep watering them and see if something does pop. Here on the corner planter, I've got a couple of nasturtiums. There's one hanging out of the box you can see kind of waving around to the lower right of the picture. It looks mostly dead, although there are a few live leaves on it, so just leave it alone and see if it turns into something. And kind of in the middle, just to the right and middle in your picture, up near the top, you can see another one popping out of that six-pack. That seems to be the only one that's developed in the six-pack, so maybe it's time to transplant that one and give up on the rest of the six-pack. Out in the south courtyard, I've got a number of pots here with some minor developments, not really much worth mentioning. There is one or two, which I'll show you in a moment. And I'm going to leave the wildflowering updates to the actual wildflowering project, so wait for part 2 and you'll see what comes there. That said, here is the African marigold in this one rectangular planter on the wall, my on-again, off-again marigold. It looked spectacular, and then when I transplanted it looked like it was dying. Well, I've cut off some of the dead leaves and it seems to be bouncing back, and I can even see a couple of buds, 2 or 3 buds on there, so we'll see what happens with that in the next few days. Worthy of note is this one white petunia, which is just, it's not more spectacular than another plant necessarily, but I like the white color. It's just kind of a shock of white, and it seems to have survived better than any of the other petunias that I've transplanted, so that makes me happy on that one. Some of the snapdragons are sort of bouncing back, and I harvested a ton of seeds from this one and planted them elsewhere, so we'll see what happens with that. Finally, we have the miniature roses, which are bouncing back nicely. The old buds took a while to completely die off, and I can see a bunch of new buds on there and some flowers, so makes me happy with those. I don't know if these are actual full-size plants or actual miniatures, so we'll just let them keep growing in here. I managed to successfully transplant them once. If they get big enough, I'll look at transplanting them again, so we'll see what happens with that. I don't know how well this shot is coming out, but this is the pergola. Things are still growing here. They haven't all died yet. And I do have some stuff for the wildflowering project in there too. But I just kind of wanted to give you a view. I hope you can see it. I realized this time of morning the sun's kind of screwing with my shot. So that's it for that. Oh, I almost forgot. In the south courtyard, the lily that's sitting in that pot just in front of the cactus has actually developed a couple of stalks for flowers. So we'll see what those flowers end up looking like. Finally, we do end on the artichoke planter, and the artichoke itself is actually looking healthier now. I'm not sure what the difference is. I just keep kind of throwing a little bit of water at a time. I know I probably should be doing deeper watering, but look at those petunias. They're looking pretty spectacular. Even the white ones in the middle are starting to kind of spread out a little bit, so that's going to be a nice effect having all of those. So things are overall doing well here, and that's it for today's update. Good morning, gardening friends. It is now Saturday at about 8:30 in the morning. Probably the earliest I've ever shot. There's only a couple of little changes since a couple of days ago, so let me go ahead and show you those, and we'll wrap up for the week. Now I'm hoping this will come through, but as it turns out, there's something, it looks like something infecting one of my lettuce plants. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the entire plant out and just remove it and dispose of it quickly, just so it doesn't infect anything else. It doesn't look like anything else is affected by this, but just behind that plant is where one of the petunias was that had died off that I replaced a couple of weeks ago. So we'll see if, what becomes of this, but that's the bad news. Well, while losing a strawberry is bad news, the good news is I went out yesterday to find a single replacement plant, and I found a deal where for the price of one I got a 6-pack. I thought for a moment, okay, where in the world am I going to plant all these? And then I said, you know what? It's a big enough planter. Let's see if we can plant all 6 of them in there. But after doing a little bit of research, it looks like it makes more sense for me to do the planting late in the day so they have overnight to recover. I'm also going to look at trying to make the soil a little bit more acidic, and we'll go from there. So I think that's it for this week. So this is the Budget Gardener signing off and saying, may your thumb be green.